Hey, this is John Fernay, the co-host of the Maryland Crabs, and I am here today with a Maryland crab cake for your listening pleasure. What's a crab cake? It's not quite a full episode, it's just a little snippet. Stay tuned and check it out. And make sure you check us out on themarylandcrabs.com. You can follow us on Twitter at MD Crabs Podcast or find us on Facebook at the Maryland Crabs Podcast. And don't forget, subscribe, rate us, iTunes. Go there now. We're here this morning and we're joined by Devesh Gupta, who is with Baltimore Gas and Electric, and he is this is a big, long, fancy name, but the Director of Strategy Utility of the Future, which sounds very, I don't know.
Oh yeah, very George Jetson.
Absolutely. Did you drive here or did you fly here?
I drove here. Only because the airways were too clogged.
Hey, BWI in Washington, I get it. I hear that it is. We also have Elvia Thompson, who is the founder of Annapolis Green, which is the folks that put on green drinks. And coming up on the 14th, they're putting on their, your
seventh annual
electric vehicle showcase. And this is moving from Maryland Avenue, where it was, I believe, a couple years ago, down to City Dock, which is a much better location for that. But that is on the 14th of September, and that goes from 11 to 5 p.m.
11 to 5, right?
Down at City Dock on the 14th. We wanted to sit there and talk about it. I mean, we've heard about the changes in transportation and everything else that we've got in the world. I know the mayor's talked about autonomous vehicles, and certainly, Elvia, you've been a fan of electric vehicles ever since you started pestering me about them probably about 4 years ago.
Yeah, I've been driving solely electric, my only car, for 5 years.
And it's amazing. And I remember the last time when they brought out the Bay plates, we ran into each other at Sandy Point State Park, and you forced me into your little electric car and showed me what get up and go it went, and you really sort of made me a fan. Unfortunately, I don't need to buy a car yet, but it is on my list of something that I'm going to do.
Actually, I pinned you to the seat when I hit the accelerator.
It was impressive.
Well, if you have a gas car and you have an electric car on the line together and they want to race, the electric car will take off and beat that gas car until the gas car finally ramps up.
Catches up.
Yeah, but it's instant. It's wonderful.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the electric vehicle showcase. And this is what I think is kind of amazing. I remember last year you had, and I can't remember maybe Tacoma Park that had a police car.
No, it's Hyattsville.
Hyattsville, which had an electric police car. And now we're seeing these electric vehicles everywhere. We're seeing them in commercial construction. I'm seeing Ford, I think, is making an electric pickup truck. They're working on, the heavy-duty pickup trucks, which is, I guess, the number one pickup truck in the world. Every time you look around, there's a Tesla or a Bolt or a Leaf or something or other that's popping up around, and consumers are embracing it. And most recently, I've seen that BG&E installed a charging station at the Pip Moyer Recreation Center. And those are popping up all over the places in the city garages and in businesses that are supporting of the electric vehicles.
Yeah, we did. And it's part of our Evie Smart program. So it was approved by the commission at the beginning of this year for us to get into the infrastructure business.
Yeah, that's the Public Service Commission.
Yeah. And the point is for us to have a base of stations around to make people feel comfortable about driving electric, certainly focusing on some places where private companies aren't going to install these charges, make them publicly available, a combination of what we call DC fast chargers, which are the chargers you can get very quick, fast charges from when you're on the go, as well as level 2 chargers is what we installed at the Pip Moyer Center. That's a charger where you can get maybe about 25 miles per hour of waiting there, of charge while you're, say, in the rec center, attending a meeting or working out or whatever the case may be. So we're really excited about the program. We're doing a lot of education around it. And it's supposed to be a way to invigorate the electrification of transportation. So we're not trying to take over the charging space, but put a base of stations in 500 around our territory so that it can supplement what the private investors are doing, the charge points of the world, the Electrify Americas and Teslas, as they're putting in a lot of the infrastructure along the corridors. this can infill a little bit. We can put chargers in your community where maybe they weren't thinking of going at the first step.
And you said you have 500 of them in...
The plan is for 500 over the program. So right now, these are our very first, which is really exciting to say here in Annapolis. The very first in our Evie Smart program are located in Annapolis, and we've got more planned for Annapolis as well.
So I worked with the Office of Environmental Policy, and we identified 15 locations, 15 public locations in the city, just in city limits, where we can put chargers.
Now, how did the charge work? I mean, I'm assuming this is not free, quote, gas, unquote. I mean, you have to pay for the electricity, correct?
That's right, you do. And these are public chargers. So still the most economic way to charge is at home because you're paying your regular rate for electricity. It's the most convenient place to charge as well, right? You get home and you plug in your vehicle before you go to bed at night.
That's what I do. I just plug right into the wall.
If you're smart, you get a big extension cord and plug into your neighbor's out.
I wouldn't advocate for that. As well, you're probably going to charge way too slowly for what your actual needs are if you're driving an electric vehicle. So what we're trying to do is, again, supplement that. Most of our EV drivers in Maryland are going to be charging at home, but for those that are out and on the go and are worried about, am I going to have enough charge to get home, which you always will. It's more about the anxiety of it than it is in the reality of it. But we're putting in that infrastructure there, and there's a standard rate that's published that's approved by the Maryland Public Service Commission for charging at either a level 2 charger, which again is a little bit slower, or a DC fast charger.
Just a ballpark, what's it cost to, you said it takes about an hour to get 25 miles worth of, just a ballpark.
So on a level 2 charger, it's going to take you about an hour to get about 25 miles of charge, and you're going to be charged at a rate of... the rate that we published, I think, is about 17 cents a kilowatt hour to charge. At home, it would be about $3 to charge.
Okay.
So a full gallon of gas, or 70 miles of gas. So
the number that I've seen is that it's as if you were driving gasoline that cost $1.31.
Okay.
So that's the kind of like the equivalent for an e-mile.
Okay.
That's the latest number I've seen. That may have changed since I saw that number, but
no, I think that's about right. Mm-hmm. That sounds correct to me too.
Okay, so I mean, this is not a thing. Now, how does this work? Now, I know the city has electric charging stations in some of their garages. Now, that's a city-funded thing, isn't it, or is that a paid thing too?
No, there's no additional charge. There's no additional cost.
See, now we got this charge. This is the English language. All these stupid charge words.
There's no additional cost. If you pull into Knighton Garage, you're going to pay for parking. You're not going to pay extra because you plugged in.
Okay, so if I have an electric vehicle and I pull into a city garage, I have the ability to be able to charge my vehicle there at no additional charge. So
that's right.
Okay.
And you're seeing that around a lot of private garages or parking lots for retail spaces. Yeah. They're seeing this as a way to entice customers to come in and spend time. If you think about, particularly in retail, if you think about an electric driver, you're attracting a customer that's going to be there and spend more time than the average consumer in your, let's say, Target. And typically the time that they're going to spend is maybe an hour there, whereas otherwise they might spend only 20 minutes. So if you're going to spend more time in a Target, you're probably going to spend more as well.
Or the decision was made, we go to places because there's charging available. So I would go to restaurant A rather than restaurant B because I can plug in while I'm there.
Right, and your hour eating there gives you your 25 miles that you need to get home. And specifically for the Baltimore, Annapolis, Washington area, you threw out the number 25 miles, and that's significant. I mean, in this area, obviously I know we've got charging stations that are popping up all over, but if I am out of juice, here, and I can charge for an hour and get 25 miles, I can get to my daughter's house in Bethesda.
Certainly, and you've got to look at the overall capacity of your vehicle too. These vehicles these days are easily above 200 miles of capacity in each vehicle, and there are plenty now that are over 300 miles of range in those vehicles too. So if you used your vehicle to get to work, you probably drove maybe 5 to 25 miles to get to work. Again, this area, people do tend to commute a lot to get to work, but you've still got all the rest of the juice in your car to get you to wherever you want to go. That said, if you're at all anxious about it, having a charger at work can be helpful. Knowing that there are public chargers along the way that you can rely on in case you need to, in case you decide, you know what, I'm going to go to Atlantic City for the weekend. Let me just pack up and go. And you didn't have time to charge, you know that there's public charging along the way.
So that's just an extra step in your trip planning that's saying, okay, well, I need to think about, if I'm going to Atlantic City for the weekend, I need to think about charging up in Dover,
just
Delaware,
a little extra planning.
Yeah,
and it's
right.
very easy to find where the charging stations are.
Now, question. I mean, you mentioned Tesla, and I know Tesla has a separate. They've got their charging pads and all sorts of crazy things, and it's different from what you plug in your house, and different from what you may see in the garage or at the Pip Moyer Rec Center that you guys just installed. Do you see a time where it's getting to be a common plug for every electric vehicle, or is this something that manufacturers are sort of hanging on to the technology, if you will?
You're seeing some of that transition now. Certainly Tesla with their Model 3s in Europe have started to put both types of chargers on the vehicle so that their drivers can charge at any charger that they find. They're not doing that yet here, but they do have the conversion kit, which is just a little attachment that you can put on your Tesla, on any charger, in order to charge your Tesla. Now that makes a Tesla driver able to charge at any charger,
right.
But still a Leaf driver can't charge at Tesla chargers. You're seeing private companies coming. Electrify America, which was, of course, funded by the penalties against the Volkswagen Corporation after their diesel scandals. They are doing a tremendous job of putting infrastructure all along the Eastern Corridor, and a lot here in Maryland too. So one of the benefits to come out of that, it's a really positive way to think about, okay, well, what do we do next? Let's get into electrification. Let's help build that infrastructure out on the private side.
Right.
So they're putting that infrastructure in, but again, that's where we saw a need, and the Maryland Public Service Commission certainly recognized that need and said, utilities, we need you to get in here too and put in a certain number of stations to make people feel comfortable with this transition into electrification, including Leaf drivers, not just Tesla drivers.
Right. It's kind of a chicken and an egg thing. So if there are more electric cars on the road, then there'll be a demand for more charging. If there's more charging infrastructure, then more people will buy the cars, and on we go. So there are in excess of 20,000 plug-in cars in Maryland right now, registered in Maryland.
Okay.
And growing like huge.
How many cars in Maryland, do you know?
I don't. Okay. It's not a big percentage yet.
Right, yeah, no.
But the goal, Maryland's stated goal, is 300,000 cars by
2025.
2025, right.
Yeah.
It's right around the corner.
It is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, before you would know that. Question, and I don't know whether it would be to you, Dinesh, or to Elvia, but how do you pay for this? Okay, I'm assuming I'm not putting dollar bills into a little money changer at the $3 in for my 25 miles.
I see.
Yeah,
so
that was one of our main focuses, is consumer experience as well. And so you pay for it through either an RFID token that's on your keychain that you've registered for ahead of time, or an app on your phone. Everybody's got their smartphones these days. There are simple apps for most of these charging companies.
Yeah. So I have 3 cards, 3 little, they look like credit cards in my car. And depending on which network I pull up to, I just swipe that card.
And is that just like a debit card that you've...
No. It's an account I've set up. So some of these are free, remember. Like, for instance, if I go to charge at Maryland Hall, our Performing Arts Center, there are 5 chargers there, and I just swipe a card just so that network knows I'm there.
Okay.
I'm not paying any money.
Okay.
So sometimes there is a cost, and sometimes
do
there
they bill
isn't.
you, or do you put money on that account?
Some of them will when I signed up, I put in a credit card number. So
and
if there's a cost,
and
then you get a statement.
I mean, I know like the Easy Pass. I know they have
exactly
to keep,
like that.
They have to keep a $25 minimum. When you hit like $24.99, they hit you again.
Yeah, but around here, most of them are free. I mean, there's no extra cost.
And that's just a smart business move on the part
absolutely. And I've been talking to my friends who own restaurants or small malls and everything, and tell them you can attract these customers. And I say the same thing to the mayor. You want people to shop downtown? We'll put in some more chargers downtown.
Yeah. I see a time where you talk about everybody having a smartphone, and I mean, I've been in your car, and it was I believe it was a Chevrolet, wasn't it?
A Chevy Bolt.
A Chevy Bolt. Certainly, visually, is one of the most technologically wild-looking cars that I've been in, anyhow. Just with the lights and everything else, I would imagine that we're going to get to a point where, with location sharing and everything else, that it's all going to be seamless, that there's going to be an app built into the car, I would think, that would recognize that you're there, and you just sort of pull up, charge up, and go.
From the chip that's been embedded in your wrist?
I had one done in the head before. That was well, let's talk a little bit about the electric vehicle showcase that's going to happen.
Yes. So you mentioned the Hyattsville Police Department. They're coming with their patrol car, which was the first one in the country. Also, their Zero electric motorcycle, which is a patrol motorcycle.
Okay.
Yeah. And this will be the third time that Sergeant Hartnett from Hyattsville is bringing it. And I've invited the police chief to come, as I invited previous police chiefs, and hopefully this will encourage them to get some grant money, which is what Sergeant Hartnett did, to buy at least one, to try it out.
It's funny, the police, I think there's such an opportunity for police in the cities to save money, not necessarily, or not specifically with electric. I mean,
it will in the end, though. It will save money.
I mean, in New York City, you look and they've got the parking enforcement people. They all drive the little smart cars, the little tiny ones that look like toys. And it's funny,
the
but
Smart for two, yeah.
Do we always need the Ford Explorers?
The Crown Victoria
for everything, every single response. I mean, if you're just going to investigate a burglary that happened or something stole a bicycle. I mean, there's no reason that you couldn't take a little.
Well, that's my argument.
You mentioned that though. Ford actually has their brand new Interceptor vehicle, which is a plug-in hybrid that they're marketing now to police departments. So again, a way of bridging that gap. So it's not fully electric, but it's plug-in hybrid electric vehicle.
Sure. So
it gets a good amount of mileage just on the charge. So they are trying to meet that need as well, not just the small cars, but police. There's a good reason why they might need an Explorer-sized vehicle, right?
Well, there's also, I was reading, I don't remember which manufacturer it was, but they have just given up on their hybrids, and they're just converting all of their energies into electric.
Yeah. Well, Porsche made that announcement some years ago. Yeah. They don't have a fully electric right now. They have a couple of models of hybrids, but the company committed to be all electric from some point forward. I think it was 2035, something like that.
Yeah, they actually just yesterday they had the full announcement of the actual Taycan fully electric Porsche. Of course, it's very expensive, but it's a four-door sports sedan, fully electric Porsche. So they've started down that path.
Yeah.
Now.
But the worst thing you can do with an internal combustion engine is start, stop. Like a typical car, let's say in the city fleet for an inspector. He goes here, or the parking enforcement.
Sure.
That's the worst thing you can do. Electric car, that's great. It's perfect, made for that. So in the long run, those gas cars, we call them ICE cars for internal combustion engine, those cars are gonna take it, break down sooner because of the way that they're driven.
Right.
And if they went to the electric fleet, that wouldn't happen. And also, there's essentially no maintenance on these cars. You rotate your tires and you change your windshield wipers and look at the brakes. But there's no oil to be changed. There's no transmission fluid. None of that.
Elvia, we're seeing that firsthand with our fleet because we're starting to make that conversion from ICE vehicles to electric vehicles, and we're seeing all those benefits firsthand and seeing, okay, well, we started with a small group. This is really working well, and we're going to go out and buy more electric vehicles for our fleet. We're actually bringing one of those electric vehicles from our fleet to National Drive Electric Week.
So what are we talking about? Like the little Broncos, or things like they're I'm dating myself. Broncos, they haven't been made in 20 years. But what are you talking about? Like the little SUVs and the cars that some of your people have?
Currently, it's the size of things like the Chevy Bolts and Nissan Leafs and things of that sort. Because we have people that need to use those vehicles as part of our fleet and be out there. And we're seeing a tremendous difference in the maintenance, specifically the things that Elvia mentioned, the maintenance costs, the cost of fuel, how often these cars break down and how reliable they are. They're much more well-suited for the functions that we have as a fleet than the ICE vehicles that we have.
Do you see a time where BG&E is using electric vehicles for some of their larger equipment? I mean, I'm assuming pole diggers may not ever be, but I mean, a bucket truck, which I know
absolutely. I mean, and that technology is improving. You pointed out that Ford is going to be releasing an all-electric Ford F-150. There's a company that they've partnered with, Rivian, that's fully focused only on pickups.
That's going to be the tipping point, I think.
Yeah, it really will.
The industry. Yeah.
Exactly. And you're starting to see the technology move very fast. And as the technology's there, we'll definitely be on board with converting fleet vehicles, even the more heavy industrial fleet vehicles.
And as a matter of fact, BGE is bringing their full-size electric bus. It's a Proterra, that's the brand, and it is a full-size bus. And It's going to be at our show.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, how many cars are going to be here?
I think we'll probably end up with about 60 cars.
60? Mm-hmm. Wow. And we can come down there and drive them all around and everything else.
Some of the owners will take cars, will take riders. Yes, some of them may even let you drive the car. That's up to the driver.
Right.
Yeah. But we're also going to have a number of seminars to answer some of these questions, like, can you do a long trip in an electric car? The answer is yes, but a couple of people are going to come and talk about their experiences. I drove to Newport, Rhode Island, no problem, stopped and charged a couple times. Just a little, thinking ahead. Another topic, which is the whole reason that my organization is doing this, is we're going to have somebody talk about the climate change mitigation effect of driving electric. 80% of the pollution that goes into the atmosphere that warms the planet comes from transportation. So people always say, well, what can I do about climate change? I'm just one person. Okay, in addition to planting lots of trees, which is number one, drive electric so that you do away with the tailpipe and all the crud that comes out of the back of the tailpipe.
Right.
So that presentation is going to be made. Also, there'll be a presentation to answer the question, so how much is my electric bill going to go up? That sort of thing. What are the government incentives? So all of these questions will be answered in these mini seminars under a big tent.
Sure. Well, I think, and you sort of touched on that about the perception of not being able to get charged is worse than the reality. And I think that's probably one of the biggest sticking points for electric vehicles to start with. It's just there's so many, it's an entirely different paradigm and a different way of thinking about moving from point A to point B that your brains don't wrap around. I mean, to be politically incorrect, you look at my girlfriend's daughters are all about the different, the genders and everything else, and the pronouns switching, I'm a he, she kind of a guy. And they're like, well, why wouldn't you call them they? I'm like, because that's not English.
Exactly.
That's just my whole thing. But this is similar to what we're seeing. No, we go to the Shell or the Exxon or the Mobil, and we put that liquid in the back of our cars.
That highly explosive.
And we turn the key, and that's how we go. And we've got the little gauge that sits there and says we've got, we're fancy. We've got a program that says you've got X miles till empty. But you kind of get an idea of where it is. And I think it's just a matter of thinking and realizing that you've got the same thing out on electric. It's just a different type
And John,
of fuel.
so much of it is about education. So groups like Elvia's, they're doing a great service educating consumers about it. That's one of the reasons why we thought we have a role here as the utility. So we developed a whole new website that customers can go to and be educated about what does it mean to drive electric? What are the questions you have? A place where they can go and get answers. They can learn about the rebates that we're offering through the program, so they can home charge. We're offering pretty substantial rebates for level 2 chargers so that you can have that comfort and not feel the anxiety when you're out on the road. They can learn about, okay, this is what BGE is doing to put chargers all across our territory in kind of an equitable way. So not putting them all in Annapolis or not putting them all in Baltimore City, but spreading them out even in your community. And they can find out where other chargers are located, not just BGE. So that education piece of it is such an important piece, and showing them this is how much you spend every year driving your specific ICE vehicle right now, right? Your Toyota Camry that you drive now. This is what you could save on a yearly basis if you drove specifically a 2019 Chevy Bolt. So giving them those tools to be educated, that's the most powerful thing you can do to start to change those hearts and minds.
And a different way of thinking too. So imagine this. There's actually there's YouTube video out there that we will put on our website. But imagine this. Imagine you wake up in the morning and you go and you grab your toothbrush, your electric toothbrush, right? Well, what if that was gas powered? You'd pull on a cord to start it like you would a lawnmower, and all this stuff would come out of the back of the toothbrush, right? Same with your coffee maker. So we've electrified all of these other things. Why can't we electrify our ride too? And then back to the point that you were talking about, Devesh. You were talking about the equity of not putting all the chargers, say, in Annapolis. There's also the question of equity among income groups, so that driving electric is not, although there is that perception, is not something just for people who are wealthy. So there's the whole concept of right to charge. And then that's where we get into, okay, so what if you live in an apartment complex or you live in a condo? So BG&E has answers to that too?
Yeah, I mean, specifically, that was one of the reasons. Again, our involvement, and kudos to the Maryland Public Service Commission for driving this and taking on this task, is thinking about things equitably. So where are the gaps? Well, multi-unit dwellings, apartment buildings, that's one of the gaps because there are challenges to people that live in apartments actually having charging that is available to them. So we have incentives that are specifically geared towards incentivizing multi-unit dwellings, apartment building owners, maybe mixed-use retail owners to install charging that can be used by their residents as well as visitors.
What's the cost to install something like that? I mean, just a ballpark idea. I mean, I don't expect...
So home chargers are going to be a different story. If you're talking about a level 2 home charger, the overall cost could be anywhere, depending on the electrician that you get. So the unit itself might be about $500, and then the install could be anywhere between $500 to $800, or maybe $1,000. Again, depending on the electrician you get, depending on where you want to site it in your house.
So this would be a 240 line. So basically, you already have that power in your house,
right?
To
so you're
your
just
dryer.
Basically bringing a station to plug it in.
Although you may need a separate circuit.
Yeah, just depending on how your house is set up.
So about $1,500 for your home,
right? And then if you're talking about a commercial installation, it's going to be more because typically the box, the electric connection is just not as close to where they want it sited in terms of a parking space. To your point, foundation, things like that start to come into play. So it's going to be more expensive, but our incentives are also quite a bit higher for those building owners.
And there is a demand for this. I mean, I personally know of 2 condo units where friends of mine live that are waiting for the show to talk to folks because they're ready to spend the money and put the chargers in their surface parking lot.
Do you know, and I know that the Pip Moyer is the first one for BG&E, so Elvia, you might know a little bit better. Are these susceptible to vandalism and damages in other parts of the area? I mean, obviously I get the stray car is going to run into it and knock it over every now and then.
You're going to have the normal. We've taken some precautions against that in terms of thinking about our design. Do we want to have bollards that protect them? But one of the neat things about this equipment is that you know when they're offline, right? Particularly, we as the electric company are going to know, oh, this one's not working right now. We can send somebody out.
Dispatch somebody out in one of their electric vehicles to check it out before you send them out in the big one.
And there are also apps for your associated website, several of them that tell you where the chargers are, and some of them are kind of like crowdsourced, like sort of like Waze. Yeah, exactly. So that people, check their cars in, and you can look and say, oh, well, that one's not offline, or they're full. So that you have an idea.
So you've got an idea.
Yeah, not everybody checks in. I'm guilty of that too.
It's making it real easy for everybody.
It is. It's very easy. It's that whole thing about it's a new idea.
Well, I want to say touch a little bit base on, for those that aren't aware of Annapolis Green and Green Drinks, which they sponsor. And actually, the next one is up at the Chesapeake Bay Trusted.
September 10th. It's 4 days before the electric vehicle show, right. And it's going to be about driving electric. We'll have 2 cars there with owners. To kind of give a little preview of the show. And the reason that we went to the Chesapeake Bay Trust to host our Green Drinks is that they're the license plate people. Mm-hmm. And so it makes sense.
Sure.
So you can get a Bay plate to put on your electric car. And I also want to say that BGE is the sponsor of our show this year. And then another local sponsor is a contributing sponsor is Audi of Annapolis with their brand new e-tron. And I just want to bring that up, not just because they're the sponsor, but because Audi was one of the first companies on a corporate level to spend big bucks advertising their electric car. So this is the ad that you may have seen on television where it shows a man coming out of his house and he says, yeah, electric cars probably aren't for you, and one goes zipping by. And you probably can't find a charging station, and then there they are. And then the last line is, well, yeah, electric driving really isn't for you, or is it? It's a terrific ad.
Great.
And there have been others, but this one I thought was especially effective because it touches on everything that people think about.
It does. Well, Annapolis Green, you're located at the corner of Maryland Avenue and State Circle, in probably the coolest little building on Maryland Avenue. You got the porch there.
And I want a charger there on the sidewalk.
And everything. And you guys have you've persisted over the years, and you are responsible largely for the lack of straws in Annapolis. At this point, you are responsible for the lack of any trash out of the Rotary's annual crab feast. You are in there and recycling, composting, and
14 tons this year,
bringing it out and repurposing it. You are. I know you've redistributed greens as mulch from the downtown Annapolis Christmas greening.
Yeah.
You're right on it, and you and Lynn have done an absolutely fantastic job. It's been a labor of love, I think, to a certain degree, but I mean,
yeah, you got that right.
Persistence.
Yeah, right now we're in a campaign funded by the city through a grant from DNR from NOAA to reduce single-use plastic in the city. Right. Yeah, and that includes bags and cutlery and all the stuff that's used for 10 seconds and then stays in the world forever.
Well, certainly, and Maryland is really moving. Maryland obviously has some great natural resources in the Chesapeake Bay. We've got a lot at risk, and you look at Annapolis City is just banned, and I know the proper word is not styrofoam, but damn it, I'm going to use it because I can't pronounce the big long word.
Expanded polystyrene.
But the county is right behind it. The state is right behind it as well.
Another question that people often ask, including the previous county executive. He said, well, I don't really see the point of electric cars because they're being fueled by, the electric generation system, which is largely run on coal. Okay, but that's changing. That's changing all the time because of these, goals that the city has put in.
And to be clear, in Maryland, a significant portion of our generation is actually carbon-free. It's coming from Calvert Cliffs nuclear plant.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is another contentious point. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the point is also that at the electricity generation plants, that's concentrated pollution, the ones that are being run, as opposed to all over the roads. How many times have you been on the road with your windows open and you're choking from the car in front of you?
Sure. Have you ever driven through the Lincoln Tunnel in a convertible?
Any of the tunnels, yeah.
I did it once and learned my lesson.
Right.
But and again, you sit there and you look at any kind of a technology. I mean, if we sat there and waited for the smartphones to become perfect before we adopted them back when they first came out, we'd still not have the smartphones. So, I mean, obviously it is little steps on the generation. Do you have any idea what it costs to replace the battery in a typical electric vehicle? Or is that not an issue? Does it outlast the car?
So the answer that we have in the Electric Vehicle Association of Greater DC, of which I'm on the board, the answer is we haven't been there long enough to be able to answer that question.
Okay.
So I know that in some of the older EVs, the batteries are being retired and used to charge other things, like in a big array.
Okay.
So I don't know that we actually have a figure on that yet.
Now, they're trying to take some of that out of the equation, though, right? The federal government has required 8-year, 100,000-mile warranties on the batteries for electric vehicles, and that's on any new vehicle that's being sold now. Which
is fine, again, as the cost of electric vehicles continues to come down. And I remember when they first came out, I mean, I hate to keep going back to Tesla, but I mean, when Teslas first came out, I mean, that was, I don't have $100,000 for an electric vehicle. Mm-hmm. That was,
Now you only need 30 to go.
And now they did what their whatever one for 30,000 that they came out with. Mm-hmm. So I think that as the cost is coming down and getting more affordable, yes, you are going to have the Porsches, but you're also going to have on the lower end, there is going to be a Yugo electric vehicle at some point.
Well, there's two new Kias that are affordable electric vehicles. There's a new Hyundai that's an affordable electric vehicle. I think it's 20 or 21 new vehicles coming out in this next model year that are all electric. Yeah. And a good number of them are the more affordable electric vehicles.
It's funny, as I look through the Electric Vehicle Association of DC flyer that you gave me, I mean, I'm seeing Harley Davidson, obviously we've got Honda, VW, BMW, Tesla, Smart, Leaf, which is Nissan, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's not their own separate thing. The Chevy Bolt, Kia, Audi, I mean, Jag.
Yes, the Jaguar I-Pace is another luxury car that just came out that's absolutely beautiful. That it's like the e-tron will kind of give Tesla a run for its money.
Mm-hmm. I see even Fiat's got one, the 500e. Maybe they can shake that moniker. You know what Fiat stands for, right?
I'm afraid to ask you.
Fix it again, Tony. They've always been horrible maintenance Horrible maintenance. But, well, I do encourage everybody to get down to the Electric Vehicle Showcase. It goes all day on the 14th of September from 11 to 5 p.m. at City Dock. Ask all your questions. Elvia is there. She will chew your ear off and answer.
Yes, and so will all the people who are bringing their cars. So most of the cars are going to be brought by owners, not by dealerships.
And what's their incentive?
You know, electric car drivers are just fanatics about this, particularly Tesla drivers.
Okay.
I mean, it really is just nuts.
You know what I'd like to know?
And there's good reason. I mean, just almost every day I'll pull in someplace and somebody will ask me about the car.
What I'd like to know, I want to do a survey with the cars down there. What percentage of them have custom plates relating to their savings? Because I bet you it's probably very high.
The electric plates are hilarious. There's things like kick gas.
Right.
Yeah, that's my favorite one.
I've seen a ton of them. But the 14th of September, that is Saturday.
Oh, and there's also two other ways of getting into an electric car. One, you don't have to buy, you can lease. You just do a standard lease from a dealership. And there's also a company coming called Steer, and what they do is they provide short-term leases so that you can kind of try it out. You can try a car out for a month. It's pricey, but, you know, just to get an idea of what it's like, you can drive, you know, car A for a week, trade it in, drive car B for a week, you know, whatever it is to cover your month. Yeah.
Interesting. And to Devesh, I mean, I think that BG&E has been on the forefront of any number of things. I mean, you look at the smart meters that they've installed in the homes, which seems decades ago now at this point, to the smart thermostats, to the apps and everything else. And now, obviously, this seems like a very natural extension into the power distribution. Pip Moyer Rec Center it's right out there in front. It's underneath the signs that say low emission vehicles, which should say no emission. I think we need to correct that sign.
Oh, they're being made. Yeah. The new signs are being made.
To be able to charge your cars anywhere, and you said 500 is your goal.
500, 500 is not just the goal. We are going to have 500 stations in by the end of the program, and hopefully go back to the Maryland Commission and say, hey, listen, the counties, the cities, they really loved these, and they want more.
When do you figure that may be? 500. I mean,
they're moving fast. So we just reported out to the Maryland Commission. We've already received requests from counties and cities for over 130 of the stations that we've been allotted. And we've only been offering those applications since July 1st.
And so one of the things that the listeners can do is contact the state representatives, your state delegate and senator, and say, listen, we want you to put more money in that fund, you know, for the Maryland incentive, because the money goes right away. It was doubled last year and is gone.
And it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those are the MEA funds. So it's not just BG&E putting in these stations also, or offering rebates on home charging. MEA has additional rebates that you can receive on home charging, which can make the cost of installing a home charger very, very small, if anything at all.
Yeah.
Right. And then, of course, you've got the federal tax credits that have been available.
And those are gone for certain models, too. Yeah,
so they're waning,
it depends on the car.
They're waning out.
And that's one of the questions that's going to be answered in one of our seminars.
Go down to City Dock on Saturday the 14th and get also to your questions. Go check out the BG&E charging station at Pip Moyer Rec Center. When is that going to come online? Do you have any idea?
So it's been constructed. It's installed. We're waiting for electrification. If not this week, then in the coming weeks, it will be.
They've got to bring the power from the other end of the building.
That's right.
Okay, fantastic. Devesh, thank you very much for your time this morning. Elvia, thank you as always for
thank you,
doing
John.
all the green stuff.
And you know what? There's an electric car in your future.
That's what I hear.
This has been the Maryland Crabs podcast with Tim Hamilton and John Fernay. Sure to follow them in all the regular places, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and online at themarylandcrabs.com. Take a moment to rate us on iTunes. Now, get the hell out of my kitchen. Seriously, go!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.